Okay, we're looking at the palace of King Minos, the ancient palace of the Minoans. And it's where the Minoan name came from. And indeed, a lot of these names that people have for people are other names, or named for kings, or named for other things, and may not quite be the name that they actually had for themselves. Quite often we don't see a name people have for themselves, but I'm going to make a few correlations here and try to add in some stuff to this. This is again the palace, and it's covered with this symbolic red ochre color. Now the ancient Minoans and Greeks and all had this bull god worship, and the Minoans had this story about the Minotaur, Tor being Taurus the bull, and Mino being the Minotians or King Minos, whose wife supposedly slept with the bull and made this creature. In the Greek stories, there is a idea that Zeus turned himself into a bull and had sex with this woman, took her across to the island, and this propagated this same situation. You saw the red ochre there on the guys symbolically jumping the bull, that they were doing this jumping of the bull. And you wonder what the symbology is. Are these people actually running with the bulls, which you still see today? You still see bullfighting, which we'll get to here shortly. But in this ancient palace here that they have, it was really quite well protected, like Pompeii, because it was buried under ashes, under this great catastrophe that had happened. And indeed, this bled out into your Phoenicians that you know about. These people were living on an island for thousands and thousands of years, and shows you that boating and the ability of people to cross and run through the Mediterranean goes back many thousands of years before people are willing to give credit for it this time. For how did they get there? You think they come on canoes and crap like that? And these people who look just like this with this long hair, sometimes red, sometimes with blue eyes, and this fair skin, but sometimes rubbed down with this symbolic red ochre that you see in Egyptians, Grecian people, Minoans, Mitanni, Etruscans, all of the people of the whole area. In fact, it even goes back into red ochre burials and stuff back into the time of Cro-Magnon and stuff, which we'll lead into here shortly. And this once great palace is an effigy of the way that it looked. And Plato told you that these people came from a time of the great year. Now, we've now realized that that great year that they talk about is a precession of the zodiac, okay? And each year we run around through this one symbolic run, one trip around the sun. But in doing so, for 2,150 years on an average, it's some zodiacs are a little wider than others before you would say cusp or it's actually in it, but roughly that exact same amount ends up going through each cycle, and then through the 12 cycles ends up being about 25,800 years that you add together to make one of these great cycles, which conspicuously takes you back through a time that they talk about in the ancient Sumerians, and then also has a time whenever they talk about the king's list of the ancient Egyptians and how far it actually goes back. In fact, if you measure it out in time, it reaches back into the edge of the Cro-Magnon age. So would the Sumerians. In fact, if you took them literally at their SARS, it would end up being 228,000 years, something like that, 232,000 years if you add in the first priest king that comes off of that. You see these stories of this bull worship and things, and how this works is that the sun is coming up in each one of these zodiacs. Say we're in Leo, okay? And the sun would come up in Leo and every day. So people would have to have a knowledge. Now imagine this. People would have to have a knowledge not of what you see at night, but at what you see of day, and then know how the procession works, and know what's exactly on the other side, knowing that the next morning when the sun comes up, it comes up into this constellation, that they could see at night right before dusk what it's going to be, and then they're like, "Dow, that's it." But they know what it was on the other side. They're giving a procession run here, so people during the night aren't able to see what you're seeing during the day, right? But they know what's there, and so this is the God aspect that's trapped inside of it. And indeed, this spawns gods, they say. How does it spawn gods? Well, it's a dual aspect situation. The sun is in Leo, so then there becomes a lion king, no pun intended, but then at the same time, there ends up being the sun is what is marking that. And these people had like a sun worship, of course, but then they have all these aspects that run out of it, nature aspects, but then astro-theological aspects running through everything. And we can tell the Sumerians had this exact concept going on. Now you look now, and we're here, our sun is coming through the very end of Pisces, and really we're just about coming through the end of the U and into the N here is where we're at. But if we retro this back when the sun was over here going through, we find that right about the time of Jesus, we're coming out of the age of Aries and into Pisces. Jesus is symbolized by the fish, and his first things that he does are actually, at the wedding and make the fish and things like that. But now we are past Pisces, coming into what's known as the cusp of the age of Aquarius. Strangely, that leads one to think of the last time that this happened, and when you look back, Enki, the god of the earth and waters of the Sumerians, was lord over the earth during the reign of the last time we were in Aquarius. His symbol is Aquarius, and their zodiac symbol, this is the thing. And a lot of it's either a female or a male, but quite often, even in the Bible it's described, you'll see a man with a jug go and get the donkey from him. That's the symbol of Aquarius when they tell him to go get the donkey. Now, right before the age of Pisces would have been the age of Aries, and that's always symbolized with the ram, and before that would have been Taurus, the bull. And so we can see in Sumerians where they have this ancient bull going on. You can see in the Minoans where they have the bull ears, or the bull horns, around the tops of everything as a cannonade on the top. You can see that the Egyptians have their Apis bull, and it's in that symbolic red ochre color. It's got to be an unblemished cow too. You see this same bull in Mithra of the Persians. You see it through all of these people. Now, where cattle are only up through this area, they don't go dipping down into Africa, and they were only brought to Africa by the Sumerians and the people of the Levant and above. But that age of rams comes after the age of bulls, and you see the top cannonades of bulls there. And again, we look at this symbolic thing here of this bull and these people having this bull worship and this symbolic jumping of the bull, right, or leaping the bull. Now these are the people that had the Minotaur, but it's really sun worship like is shown in here, and sun worship that was in the Egyptians with their cow, with the Apis bull, with the horns set inside there. So one would say that the sun is resting in Taurus, which you see all over their iconography. The sun god Ra, but all of the aspects, which Horus and all these things were all supposed to have been aspects. And when you get to the time of Amarna, they try to take it back and say, y'all have made a bunch of bullshit out of it, and it's really straight this, and the others are aspects, which they went with. But as soon as he was gone, they wiped the face of that off and went right back to their old worship. They couldn't, much like the Greeks having this giant pantheon going, they didn't want to let it go because they thought, well, if I quit worshiping this guy, something bad like that's going to happen, or if I quit helping there, this is going to happen. They were so caught up in almost like saints nowadays, where if you have something go on, you pray to a certain saint or do certain things, that they had gotten caught up in, and they believed that they couldn't let that go. Of course, he was trying to tell them that There was a time before that, a golden age we were all doing fantastic in, before y'all ever came up with this crap, but nobody would go with the idea. And so he was kicked out, and that of course also leads with the symbolic red ochre here to the idea that Scotia, the daughter of Akhenaten, was banished out. She left with a large contingent of people and was said to have gone through the lower part of the Mediterranean, across the North Africa, out the Pillars of Hercules, and many belief systems say that they showed up in Scotland under a big storm, lost their boats and things, perhaps then or shortly after. Big conflicts with Ireland, the Celts, and so on like that, but got assimilated into that ideal. Now we realize that whenever the land of Egypt started becoming a wasteland and started getting taken over by foreign people, whereas like the Nubians and Akkadians and things like that, that they had left in mass migration, and the Hyksos, who also were co-rulers of Egypt for a good long time, had left and run up into Europe and took a left. Looking at genetics, we can see that King Tut's DNA matches people over in Northern Europe, and especially around the Britain area, and through the Celtic areas into these islands we're talking about. And this leads new credence to the old Scottish and Irish folk song, well, you take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before you, because Scotia had taken the low road around the Mediterranean, and later others had taken the high road. And this bull symbology that leads all the way back to this time, but I'm telling you now that the people that had control over bulls had the same symbology 28,000 years ago, 25,600 years ago, plus the run back to Taurids, 28,000 years ago, before the last ice age. This symbolic rubbing down of red ochre, where you can always see the Egyptian women are always pale, but the men are always drawn with this symbolic red ochre. Well, there's two things to that. They have a symbology where they're going to care for the woman so she doesn't go out in the sun and she doesn't get tanned. It's reflected in the Bible where the Egyptian woman shows up and she says, do not look upon me for I'm dark. A lot of people try to take that for being a negroid or something, but the next line is very telling. She says, for the sun have looked upon me. They made me work in the vineyards. So she is tanned, and actually begging for forgiveness for it, because you're supposed to be fair-skinned, and of course she was coming to them as a bride type of thing, so it's just looking like that. But the symbolic red ochre they all rub themselves down with and show symbolically in their art that you see this. And I tell you again, it goes back to all these other people, but you can see the females and how pale they are compared to the males, and there's not a group of people ever on the planet where the females look like this. There's also not a group of men that really look this red. Some Indians could maybe get somewhat close to it. Some white guy that's half tan with a hellish sunburn could probably get there. But we're not to believe that every one of these artist renditions are the day after a sunburn, are we? No. So you see this symbolic religion thing that goes back on this Taurus bull, this jumping of the bull. The bull is red. He's red ochre, right? And these pale people jumping the bull. Well, they find the DNA of the ancient Minoans, once they pulled a few teeth out, looks like it's got European origins. And when you look at these statues and stuff and all their art, you can tell that they have definite connections to it. Small little, this is the tip of a small ring and that intricate artwork they have there, but that's symbolic of this type of thing, where there's a symbolic bull killing. And you still see this today echoing in. And what could this possibly come from? Where did they get this idea? And there's a lot of conjecture to it. But one thing that people have found out, they say, oh, well, the bulls are crazy after the color red. Well, they're actually colorblind. It has nothing to do with that. That there's a symbology that's been thrown in your face for a long time and people don't get the idea. But it goes back to like Mithras. And this idea of a god who, if you look, he's killing a bull. And in all cases, it's an unblemished bull, whether it is a red bull or it is a white, pale, unblemished bull. Sometimes his tail looks like a comet. Quite often he has sparkling of stars in his cape, but it's red They say the inside of his cape is the dome over the earth, like you see symbolically over here on the left. Oh, let me try to get that better in there for you. Like you see symbolically over here on the left, going around over his body in an arc. But if we look at this one, this is the symbolic cloak of invisibility. Well, what is it? Well, it's the thing that's unseen. What's not seen? Well, there's 7 stars right here. That's the 7 sisters. That's the Pleiades. Always in here. Hopefully you can see it in there. There's a dog licking at him where the blood's coming off, and there's a snake. Also down here right near it is a scorpion. So you wonder what these things are. Well, Ophiuchus is the ancient snake, Zodiacal, that's gone now. It's no longer looked at and worshipped. And if you look at the bull symbology, the neat thing here is if you look at the line of his leg and his knee and things, this lines up, and he is the bull, not Taurus. He is the bull, but he's killing Taurus, leading into the age of Aries, which has always been known as the age of the Aryans, where they came on strong and helped to make civilization all happen thousands of years ago, 2 zodiac runs back, right? And so you see the symbology inside of his cape, the Pleiades, how he's stabbing him. Always got this knife, this dagger going in. He's in this stance. Now that stance is Taurus again. And you can see this bull worship going back even to Göbekli Tepe itself. Right here, these bottom pictures. And on the sides of it, you can see a bull with the sun resting between his horns. You can see this symbolic arc that's going on here. This is 10,000 years ago, 10,000 BC. You can see in this cave art, which I'll show you a closer picture of, this is Taurus. And people are saying, yeah, that's a pretty good picture of a bull for a caveman. That is Taurus. If you took the dots that make that up, like connect the dot, and even dots in his forehead, that becomes that. This 3-dot line here is Orion. Right? Hopefully that's showing up enough to where you can see it. And what are these 7 stars that are back here? What are the 7 stars that always keep showing up on the Sumerian tablets in that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 little lineup that looks just like this lineup that's right here? It's kind of tilted, but what's that 1, 2, 3, 4, couple up under it look? That's the Pleiades. That's right over his shoulder. That's the place that he's stabbing him. He's stabbing him on his shoulder. And if you roll back astral charts far enough, you'll find that the Pleiades slowly come out of his shoulder. And how long does it go back here? This goes back close to 48,000 years. This is 2 cycles of the zodiac back. And they have this symbology. These people that we've since from childhood have been taught that they're like, ugh. They seem to have this going on pretty good, though. You can find it on ancient coins. The same symbology, and on that ancient coin there's a swastika right there, which all this is added up to where Hitler saw this and kind of went crazy and everything. And of course there's a lot of conjecture about that. We're not getting into that. He found things about Aryans. We're finding things about Aryans too. You find that Orion and Taurus and the Pleiades, and Orion seems to be fighting the bull, and Orion is Arion, Aryan, A-R-I-O-N, Aryan. The Aryan people that come up with this. If you look at this plate here, it has the signs of the zodiac going all around it. Back in ancient Sumer, the earliest we find in Ur, this is the front of a lyre. It has the bull symbology on it, and they have dressed the bull up where he has a lapis lazuli beard. He has blue eyes. Why would a bull have blue eyes? What is the symbology? I'm telling you what the symbology is and what it goes with. There's more to it too. And it leads to that thing I was telling you about, the Halloween experience that goes on there. When you look at this esoteric thing, and this is dating before Christ, well over 1,000 years before it, and you can see the effigies that are here. And this is Ophiuchus, the coiled up serpent that's around him, and there's zodiacs all around him, some of them actually being animals. Gemini, the 2 guys. I don't know if that's showing up quite well in there. But the staff, sometimes a staff of a shepherd, sometimes the light of the earth, the light bringer. He's bringing a light. Sometimes there's a torch on this side that's pointing up. There's one pointing down, showing you the fall of man. It's also the symbolic gesture of as above, so below. This goes on in the sky. We act it out here. It's something that goes around and around. When men are trapped. Why are they trapped? Because this zodiac goes around and around. We don't keep going. You know, we go in a circle. Nothing new. There's nothing new under the sun. All that they say, you know, it's because we come around, because we've done this before. We've been here before. Now, we weren't this technology and we weren't these same people, but damn it, we've been here before. We've done these same things over and over again. We seem to have this amnesia of what actually happened. We don't, it's lost. But you see this symbology in here and how these attach with these different symbolic ideas. You can see the zodiac here on one of the earliest Mithra statues. You see it in a Shiva painting where Shiva is the god and the destroyer. You can see this knife, the scorpion, the snake, the dog, everything lining up. His coat, it's always in the same stance. Here's one with a comet tail on it, the stars above, trying to tell you what that's about. You can see it echoed in the Bible at right about the time of Moses, that he got mad because he comes down from the mountain and people are doing calf worship. It has the symbology above that that shows you what that is. Well, he's mad about it. From then on, what do? They start worshiping rams. Well, they're not worshiping them. Oh, well, they're actually sacrificing them. Where they were sacrificing bulls. Read into it. They're sacrificing rams and goats. Well, they're goat herders and stuff. Yeah, were they really bull farmers right before that? No. What the story's a twist, and it's pulling everything all together. It's trying to show you a unity that the people had in different areas that are the same situation. Moses had horns when he came down, but I'm not going to go into that in this video. You can see the symbology in the Bible where they pass to the next age, the age of Taurus. So during the age of Taurus, you have the golden calf that he was mad about. You know, Aaron, his brother, had made it. He's got 12 symbols on him, the 12 tribes, the 12 months, the symbology of the zodiac. Everything is zodiacal and based off of it because that's what people were doing. People used to look at the sky at night. Shepherds by night, tending their flocks, would pay attention, and they had enough intelligence to have developed all of this that becomes esoteric knowledge that to the common layman was actually secret knowledge. You didn't need to know all of this. It'd probably just keep you bewildered. You don't need to go through all of this. Well, now we're so far past this type of knowledge that whenever people try to show it to you, a lot of people don't even agree with it, or they can't even see it. They're like, oh, well, then, no. Well, you have to have the mentality of the people back then and what they were trying to believe, and you'll actually find yourself really being able to go with this exact concept here and what people had going on. But it all is based around a sun god. There's a sun worship that goes on, right? And with that sun god, and here you go with that painting that I'm trying to show you. Let me see if I can get this just a little better. So you can see with that, there's the belt of Orion. Orion is standing there in that smiting pose. Now, this exact pose that he's standing in is that pose you see the Egyptians in whenever they're fixing to smite the vile Negroid troglodytes, and they've got them by the head, or any of their foes. Some of them, they have 4 or 5, 6 people all grabbed up in one big knot, and he's fixing to smote them, and this is that symbol of the Aryans. Herodotus tells you that those and the Medes and even the Persians were all called Aryans in ancient times before Media came to Medes, and they changed their name just as the Persians had done when Perseus had came. So it shows you this equality of it. Egypt is not the name of the people that they had back then. And strangely enough, here's a picture of a caveman, right? The Egyptian kings list revealed that the total number of years covered by all their god kings equals 36,525 years. This time frame perfectly matches the sudden appearance of Cro-Magnon in the fossil record, somewhere between 36 and 40,000 years ago, it gets right on that cusp there. And they find some right before that that don't have any Neanderthal crossbreeding in them and stuff. And it shows you that whenever we had what we call the modern man, geneticists now say there is no genetic difference between a Cro-Magnon and our current people that are here. That Cro-Magnon, even due to the actual definition of a modern human, bifacial blade technology, learning writing, symbolism, making cities, doing things. This all comes about during when we would call ourselves Cro-Magnon. So modern humans are pretty much back at this time. Whenever, hold on, when I was a kid, they're all ugh and got a stick. Yeah, well, Orion's got a stick there too in his shield. He still does to this day. Aren't we going to space now? Now, when we look at this, it's a depiction of the actual radiant, or the projection point that all these asteroids are coming from during the Taurid meteor shower, named so because it comes from around Taurus and the shoulder. It actually looks like they're emanating from around the Pleiades. In ancient days, it would have looked just about like it was coming straight out of it. And you see all of these streaks in the sky. And this lends back to the time whenever the Great Flood had happened and so on. This is a reminder every year during this time where these streaks come down. Now, ancients believe that once the birds took your body pieces and went up to heaven, that leads into an idea of angels escorting you to heaven to these gates, that you would become, if you were worthy, you would become a star. And then we've always called these falling stars, even though we know that if a star is as big as our sun, and if it fell to earth, it would just smoke us like we're a piece of dust. But we call these falling stars. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, I wonder what you are. Right? And these stars that fall from heaven, and the angels, and 1/3 of the angels fell. There's a giant meteor storm when all these bad things start happening in the Bible. And it all correlates around this concept, the Day of the Dead, and something like 12 societies that are totally separated from each other, linguistically and in many other ways, all have this same Day of the Dead, All Saints Day, Samhain, Halloween, all of these things within a 2-week period that encompasses the 2-week period that this happens, and leading into it's the Leonid meteor shower. Conspicuously, Perseus is hanging in here coming after it. The ancient stories. So, once you put it all together, you can see a lot of this comes from just ancient symbology of this Aryan thing that goes on with the symbolic killing of the bulls, the age of Aries, which led into the age of Pisces, and Jesus the fish. One of the first things he does is have the wedding and have the fish and so on like that. His symbology now is the fish, but if you look at that fish symbol, that's a Vesica Pisces. And I've showed you something about that to do with the building of the pyramids, ironically. And all this ancient geometry situations they say they got from measuring the stars. Now, who was it that measured the stars? Well, even in the Bible, it tells you that it's Ur of the Chaldees, those Sumerian guys, the people from Ur. Abraham was from Ur. This is where it all comes from. They had the ancient story about the flood, and Utnapishtim, everything else, and their major god was Utu, the sun god, and all these other aspects, right? On was the god of the skies, and he spawned forth all of these other gods. Now, he was up in heaven, but they came down on earth and did these things, and then they're deified back in the sky. There they are. This is that symbology. This is how this twists. I'm not going to go on, but I know as soon as I quit this, I'm going to remember about 10 things I should have said. But y'all have a great day and enjoy. This is Connections. Peace.